Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Girdlestone, and alongside Jenna, I work at the University of Leeds. And today we'll be talking about our experience of um, analysis of our in-sessional provision. And as you can see in the aims and outline, those are in two different schools at the University of Leeds, one in the business school and one in the School of Food Science and Nutrition. And in this talk, we'll be exploring how we approach this from two different perspectives. The process of evaluating the impact of our in-sessional provision. We'll discuss the strengths and limitations of both, present what findings we have, and reflect on both those and some of the wider impacts and implications of completing the impact projects.
Okay, so recently we've seen an increased demand for studies looking into the impact of language education due to both accountability to stakeholders and in order to improve programs. Hadley conceptualizes measuring as demonstrating educational excellence and justifies one's existence in the organisation, and this led Tibbetts and Chapman to question if its effectiveness is not made visible, should it actually exist? In terms of in-sessional, we might be required to demonstrate impact, especially if there's a cost associated with the provision, and probably even more so in the current educational climate.
So those are some of the kind of theoretical motivations, but quite a lot of the impact project work that was established in 2019 also has quite a lot of practical implications. So just to sort of give a context of the University of Leeds' approach to this, there was a collective impact project set up to cover all of the in-sessional provision in all of its many different guises at the University of Leeds. Initially, this was created to try and sort of surface a lot of the work that was happening. You know, in-sessional can become hidden, in hard to sort of pick out what role it plays in supporting the students, how it's working, if it's working, and so on. So people who were involved in In-Sessional were invited to take part in this impact project, but could design or at least approach how they were going to measure the impact of the In-Sessional from different perspectives to create a range of different evidence bases and viewpoints. And also to give people some autonomy and flexibility, because everyone would be in slightly different circumstances. But at some point we have to sort of try and define what impact is or could be, and that could be different for different people. And sort of overarching generalized view of it from Martin states that any impact on student education could refer to something that is measurable and observable in changing students' knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors as a result of experiencing something, either as an additional process, an intervention, or experience. So our approach to measuring impact did come from two different perspectives, based on some of those contextual differences as well. So we'll go into a bit more detail on those two approaches on the next slide.
So there are, as we know, there are numerous sides of benefits of embedded in-sessional provision, and this includes being contextualized, being more motivating, helping students see the relevance of the provision, and avoiding it being seen as peripheral. But these benefits are often cited in amongst the literature, but part of the looking into the impact in in-sessional is how do we know or how do we demonstrate that this is the case, especially when we're embedded in schools outside of the language centre.
So on this slide, you'll see the rationale for both of our projects. We've divided them into kind of logistics and scholarship interests. So from an international business perspective, I was directly asked by the business school to demonstrate what difference or impact the in-sessional provision would have, with the primary outcome being, will this be something that we will continue to have? So in the first year of the in-sessional, which was established around 3 years ago, before any classes had been designed, this question was asked. So that was the sort of logistical, practical application for me of undertaking the impact project. But as part of that process, what I could hopefully achieve was also to better understand the students, the discipline, what was happening, what were students being expected to do. So get more of an understanding of the context, and to better support the students whilst also trying to monitor, measure and demonstrate impact of in-sessional provision.
Mine was slightly different in that I wasn't asked to demonstrate impact, but every April I had to make a case for in-sessional continuing in the School of Food Science and Nutrition. So I was initially seconded in 2018, and I think it was 6 hours a week in semester one, but it steadily grew, but every year I had to make a case for it. So logistically, I did need to demonstrate impact in order to continue to extend this provision and to make sure it continued. But from my interests, I, again, like Clark, was really interested in how to meet student need, but I was also interested in what were the impacts of this provision? Did they include academic language and literacies, but also did they go beyond the academic impacts in food science and nutrition? And I think this interest came from the DSE making a comment in COVID about me being solely responsible for the students' sense of belonging that year that we were online. So I wondered if once we were on campus, if there were other impacts beyond those academic impacts as well.
Okay, so this is a bit more information about my context for in-sessional provision and the approach or method taken. So as I previously mentioned, it was a new addition to the offer for students during the 22-23 academic year, and it was an in-sessional provision attached specifically to the MSc International Business program. That is still the only LUBS-based program-specific in-sessional provision currently operating. It is on that particular year, there were 147 students enrolled on the program, and all students would be offered the opportunity to attend the in-sessional. It would appear on their timetables, and it would run in both semester one and semester two. There was no sort of requirement for attendance. Students would just be very strongly encouraged. In those sessions, we had, in the design, in organisation, we had 5 1-hour sessions per week, and they would run for 9 weeks per semester. And because it was program specific, it could also be module specific. So in semester one, I was attached to a module called International Business Theory, where students were working towards the completion of a case study exam during the exam period. And in semester two, I was attached to the dissertation module. And as an aspect of that, students would be tasked with producing a research proposal for the dissertation. What I noted during that first semester was that even though the assessments and processes were very much focused on writing, there were very few opportunities for students to practice their writing, demonstrate their writing skills, when it was not in a formative way. Quite a lot of the writing they were producing was also quite high stakes. The exam was 100% of the assessment for that particular module in semester one. And as I said, LUBS had asked the question, what is the value of this EAP in-sessional to us and the students? So quite naturally, it led to a sort of focus on student writing and opportunities for students to develop their awareness of features in relation to fulfilling tasks, appropriate structure for genre conventions and elements of language. And those were areas that I would focus on in the sessions as well. And to sort of map out this process, I decided to look at and collect and analyze 3 samples of student writing throughout the academic year. So there was a kind of baseline, like a pre-semester 1 piece of work that students were asked to do, which was to write a personal statement, which was a task that involved some very clear instructions around content and structure. And obviously, as part of that, I could also look at it from a sort of grammar, vocabulary, style perspective too. So we were going to look at that and give it a kind of formative grade using an adapted language center assessment criteria, which had some areas and descriptors removed and kept descriptors relevant to those 3 areas in. And then, as I mentioned, in semester 1, students were working towards this case analysis report, which was a 2,000-word exam. And in semester 2, students were required to complete and submit a research proposal, again, something that had quite a clear structure and content instructions and so on. That would submit that to their supervisor in advance of continuing on to completing their dissertation project. So those were the 3 samples of work that were going to be formatively assessed during the year. And as part of that process, we kind of obviously created this baseline and set a grade of 55 in connection to how we approach grading students' work on the pre-sessional as a number to look at if a student achieved below that grade, they would be identified as someone who perhaps should be encouraged or would be encouraged to attend the in-sessional. So as part of sort of looking through the personal statements, we identified 51 students who were coming out on the criteria as a below 55 grade. And then during the semester, because it was open to everyone, we had 81 students who attended across, from the target group, we had 51, and from the non-target group, so to speak, we had 30. But this was kind of a natural creation of some comparative analysis opportunities. So we could look at all of those from the target group who attended, all of those who just attended against those from the target group who didn't attend, and then all others who didn't attend. So we kind of created an opportunity for some data analysis and comparative analysis to happen. And what I had to do was kind of maintain very meticulous attendance records. So who was attending, how regularly were they attending across semester 1 and 2. And there was opportunity for some very brief data analysis from my perspective in the beginning and at the midway point between semester 1 and 2. But I also worked with my colleague in the business school, Andreas Georgiadis, to conduct a larger scale comparative analysis of the entire data set when it was finally collected at the end of semester 2 as well.